Question 1. Process analysis reveals a series of unusual API calls originating from an unfamiliar IP address targeting sensitive data storage services within the organization's AWS environment. These calls include attempts to list bucket contents and download objects, occurring outside of normal business hours and without prior authorization. The cloud audit logs also show a subsequent attempt to modify access control lists, ACL, on one of the targeted buckets. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for a certified incident handler, CI, to take in this situation, adhering strictly to U.S. regulatory frameworks and NIST guidelines? Option A. Immediately initiate a full forensic snapshot of all affected AWS resources and begin a detailed correlation of the suspicious API calls with known threat intelligence signatures, while simultaneously reviewing the ACL modification for signs of data exfiltration. Option B. Dismiss the log entries as automated scanning activity and continue normal monitoring, as the ACL modification attempt was unsuccessful. Option C. Isolate all AWS resources associated with the suspicious IP address and block further access to the targeted data storage buckets to prevent potential data loss. Option D. Rely solely on AWS Security Hub alerts to identify the nature of the threat and await further automated remediation actions. Correct answer is A. Immediately initiate a full forensic snapshot of all affected AWS resources and begin a detailed correlation of the suspicious API call with known threat intelligence signatures, while simultaneously reviewing the ACL modification for signs of data exfiltration. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in cloud incident response, identifying subtle indicators of compromise within a high volume of log data, while adhering to specific regulatory requirements for data handling and reporting. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for rapid threat detection with the imperative to maintain data integrity, privacy, and compliance with the relevant regulatory framework. Misinterpreting log data or failing to follow established protocols can lead to delayed incident containment, increased damage, and significant legal and financial repercussions. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based analysis of cloud audit logs, correlating events across different services to build a comprehensive picture of potential malicious activity. This method prioritizes the identification of anomalous patterns and deviations from baseline behavior, which are key indicators of a security incident. Specifically, it involves leveraging cloud-native logging services, e.g., AWS CloudTrail, Azure Activity Logs, Google Cloud Audit Logs, to track API calls, resource modifications, and access attempts. By focusing on suspicious activities such as unauthorized access to sensitive data, unusual administrative actions, or attempts to disable security controls, an incident handler can effectively pinpoint the scope and nature of a potential breach. This approach aligns with regulatory expectations for due diligence in security monitoring and incident detection, emphasizing the need for thorough investigation before declaring an incident resolved or taking definitive action. An incorrect approach that involves immediately isolating all affected cloud resources without a clear understanding of the incident's scope or impact is professionally unsound. This can lead to unnecessary service disruption, impacting business operations, and potentially causing financial losses. Furthermore, it bypasses the critical step of gathering sufficient evidence, which is essential for accurate incident assessment and reporting, and may violate regulatory requirements for a measured and justified response. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss unusual log entries as benign without further investigation, represents a significant failure in due diligence. This can allow an ongoing attack to persist undetected, leading to more severe consequences. Regulatory frameworks often mandate a proactive and thorough approach to security monitoring, and ignoring potential threats is a direct contravention of this principle. Finally, an incorrect approach that focuses solely on external threat intelligence feeds without correlating them with internal cloud log data is insufficient. While external intelligence is valuable, it must be contextualized within the organization's specific environment. Relying only on external indicators without examining internal logs means that an incident might be occurring within the cloud environment without being detected, leading to a failure to meet internal security policies and external regulatory obligations for monitoring and response. The professional reasoning process for such situations should involve a structured incident response methodology. This begins with preparation, followed by identification, including log analysis, containment, eradication, recovery, and lessons learned. During the identification phase, a critical evaluation of all available log data, cross-referenced with known threat indicators and baseline behaviors, is paramount. Decisions regarding containment and remediation must be based on a clear understanding of the incident's impact and scope, supported by irrefutable evidence derived from log analysis. Adherence to established incident response plans and relevant regulatory guidelines is non-negotiable. Question 2. Benchmark analysis indicates that a financial institution has experienced a suspected data exfiltration event. The SIEM system has flagged unusual outbound network traffic originating from a critical database server. The incident response team needs to quickly determine the scope of the breach and identify what sensitive customer data, if any, was compromised. Which of the following approaches best aligns with U.S. regulatory requirements for incident handling and data breach notification? Option A. Prioritize system recovery by rebooting the affected server and clearing its logs to ensure operational continuity, assuming the unusual traffic was a false positive. Option B. Focus on patching the vulnerability that may have allowed the traffic, without extensively analyzing logs, to quickly restore normal operations. Option C. Immediately isolate the affected server to prevent further data loss, and then initiate a forensic investigation by collecting and analyzing all relevant logs from the SIEM, network devices, and the compromised server to reconstruct the attack timeline and identify the specific data accessed. Option D. Rely on user reports and anecdotal evidence from IT staff to estimate the potential data compromise, as detailed log analysis can be time-consuming and may not yield definitive results. The correct answer is C. Immediately isolate the affected server to prevent further data loss, and then initiate a forensic investigation by collecting and analyzing all relevant logs from the SIEM, network devices, and the compromised server to reconstruct the attack timeline and identify the specific data accessed. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the critical need to balance rapid incident response with the meticulous requirements of regulatory compliance, specifically within the context of U.S. federal regulations governing data breach notification and evidence preservation. The certified incident handler, CIH, must demonstrate a deep understanding of how log analysis and SIEM tools directly support these obligations. The challenge lies in the potential for incomplete or improperly handled log data to compromise both the effectiveness of the incident response and the organization's ability to meet legal and ethical mandates. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process of log collection, correlation, and analysis using the SIEM, directly tied to identifying the scope and impact of the incident. This is crucial because U.S. regulations, such as HIPAA for healthcare data or various state data breach notification laws, often require timely and accurate reporting of compromised data. Effective log analysis provides the evidence needed to determine what data was accessed or exfiltrated, by whom, and when, which is fundamental to fulfilling these notification requirements and demonstrating due diligence. The SIEM role in correlating disparate log sources is vital for reconstructing the attack chain and identifying the root cause, which is a key component of a robust incident response plan and a requirement for preventing future incidents. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate containment, without thorough log analysis, risks overlooking critical details about the breach's extent. This could lead to underreporting or mischaracterizing the incident to affected parties and regulators, violating the spirit and letter of notification laws. Another incorrect approach, which involves deleting or overriding logs prematurely to clean up the system, is a severe ethical and regulatory failure. This action directly obstructs any subsequent forensic investigation, hinders regulatory compliance, and can be interpreted as an attempt to conceal information, leading to significant legal penalties and reputational damage. A third incorrect approach, which relies on anecdotal evidence or assumptions rather than data-driven log analysis, fails to provide the objective proof required by regulators and can lead to flawed incident response strategies. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes evidence-based actions. This involves understanding the regulatory landscape upfront, integrating log analysis and SIEM capabilities into the incident response plan, and ensuring that all actions taken during an incident are documented and defensible. The process should involve 1. Immediate incident identification and initial containment. 2. Systematic log collection and preservation. 3. Comprehensive SIEM-driven analysis to understand the incident's scope and impact. 4. Evidence-based reporting and remediation. And 5. Post-incident review to improve log management and SIEM utilization. Question 3. The audit findings indicate that the organization's incident response team, IRT, lacks clearly defined escalation procedures and has not conducted a comprehensive tabletop exercise in over 2 years. As the IRT lead, which of the following approaches best addresses these findings while adhering to best practices for building and maintaining an effective IRT? Option A. Prioritize the development and documentation of clear IRT roles, responsibilities, and escalation paths, followed by the scheduling and execution of a realistic tabletop exercise to test these procedures. Option B. Delegate the responsibility for defining escalation procedures to individual IRT members and postpone the tabletop exercise until the next fiscal year. Option C. Focus on updating the incident response plan's technical playbooks with the latest malware signatures and exploit mitigation techniques. Option D. Immediately procure advanced threat intelligence platforms and security orchestration, automation, and response (SOAR) tools to enhance the IRT's technical capabilities. The correct answer is D. Immediately procure advanced threat intelligence platforms and security orchestration, automation, and response (SOAR) tools to enhance the IRT's technical capabilities. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential gap in the organization's incident response capabilities, specifically concerning the incident response team IRT. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the IRT lead to balance immediate operational needs with long-term strategic improvements, all while adhering to the strict regulatory framework governing incident handling. The pressure to demonstrate progress to auditors and senior management can lead to hasty decisions that may not be sustainable or compliant. Careful judgment is required to prioritize actions that not only address the audit findings, but also build a robust and resilient IRT aligned with best practices and regulatory expectations. The correct approach involves a systematic review and enhancement of the IRT's foundational elements. This includes clearly defining roles and responsibilities, establishing robust communication channels, ensuring adequate training and skill development, and regularly testing and updating incident response plans. This approach is right because it directly addresses the underlying causes of potential deficiencies identified by the audit. From a regulatory perspective, frameworks like NIST SB 800-61 Revision 2, which is a foundational document often referenced in incident handling certifications, emphasize the importance of a well-defined and trained IRT as a cornerstone of effective incident response. Ethically, it demonstrates a commitment to due diligence and the protection of organizational assets and stakeholder trust by proactively strengthening defenses. An incorrect approach would be to focus solely on acquiring new technology without addressing the human and procedural elements. This fails to meet regulatory expectations because technology is a tool, not a solution in itself. Effective incident handling relies on skilled personnel who know how to use the tools and follow established procedures. Without proper training and defined processes, new technology can be ineffective or even exacerbate issues. Another incorrect approach is to postpone necessary training and plan updates until after the audit is fully resolved. This is ethically problematic as it prioritizes a superficial resolution over genuine improvement, potentially leaving the organization vulnerable to future incidents. It also fails to meet regulatory requirements for maintaining an up-to-date and effective incident response capability. Finally, an approach that involves only superficial documentation updates without actual process changes is also incorrect. Regulators and auditors look for demonstrable capabilities, not just paperwork. This approach is a failure of due diligence and misrepresents the organization's actual readiness. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured assessment of the audit findings, a clear understanding of the relevant regulatory requirements, and a prioritization of actions based on risk and impact. The IRT lead should engage stakeholders, including management and technical teams, to develop a comprehensive remediation plan. This plan should outline specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, SMART, objectives for strengthening the IRT, with clear accountability for each action. Regular progress reporting and validation of implemented changes are crucial to ensure effectiveness and compliance. Question 4. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a temporary, overly permissive firewall rule to restore critical business operations immediately after a denial-of-service attack is the fastest way to mitigate financial losses, but it significantly increases the attack surface. As a certified incident handler, operating under U.S. regulatory frameworks, what is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Implement a narrowly defined, temporary firewall rule that allows only essential traffic for critical services, with strict logging and a predefined rollback plan, while simultaneously working on a more robust, long-term solution. Option B. Disable the firewall entirely for the affected segment to ensure maximum connectivity and minimize the impact of the denial-of-service attack. Option C. Escalate the decision to senior management without providing a recommended course of action, leaving them to make the final determination on firewall rule changes. Option D. Immediately implement the overly permissive firewall rule to restore all services as quickly as possible, and address security concerns later once operations are back to normal. The correct answer is A. Implement a narrowly defined, temporary firewall rule that allows only essential traffic for critical services, with strict logging and a predefined rollback plan, while simultaneously working on a more robust, long-term solution. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for incident handlers, balancing immediate operational needs with long-term security posture and regulatory compliance. The professional challenge lies in the pressure to restore service quickly, while ensuring that the incident response itself doesn't introduce new vulnerabilities or violate established security policies and regulatory mandates. A hasty decision regarding firewall rule modification could have significant repercussions, including data breaches, service disruptions, and regulatory penalties. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented review of firewall logs and the proposed rule changes, cross-referenced against the organization's security policies and relevant regulatory requirements. This ensures that any modifications are not only effective in mitigating the immediate threat, but also align with the organization's overall security strategy and legal obligations. Specifically, for a certified incident handler operating under U.S. regulations, e.g., NIST frameworks, HIPAA, PCI DSS if applicable, this means ensuring that any firewall rule change is justified, least privilege-based, and logged for audit purposes. The CIH must consider the potential impact of the change on data confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and ensure that the change does not inadvertently expose sensitive data or create new attack vectors. This methodical approach is critical for demonstrating due diligence and maintaining an auditable trail, which is a cornerstone of regulatory compliance and professional responsibility. An incorrect approach of immediately implementing broad, permissive firewall rules to restore service without proper review risks violating the principle of least privilege, a fundamental security concept mandated by many regulations. This could lead to unauthorized access to sensitive systems or data, resulting in a breach. Furthermore, failing to document the justification and impact of such a change creates an audit deficiency, making it impossible to demonstrate compliance with security best practices and regulatory requirements. Another incorrect approach, that of delaying the firewall rule modification indefinitely due to fear of making a mistake, would be professionally negligent. This inaction would prolong the incident's impact, potentially causing greater business disruption and reputational damage, and failing to fulfill the incident handler's duty to actively manage and resolve security incidents. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that prioritizes risk assessment and mitigation. This involves understanding the threat, evaluating potential solutions, considering their impact on security and compliance, and documenting all actions and justifications. In situations involving critical infrastructure or sensitive data, consultation with security architects, legal counsel, and relevant stakeholders is often a necessary step before implementing significant changes. The CIH must always operate within the established incident response plan and adhere to the organization's security policies and applicable regulatory frameworks. Question 5. The performance metrics show a significant increase in unauthorized access attempts and successful data exfiltration over the past 48 hours, indicating a sophisticated ongoing attack. The CISO is under immense pressure from the board to contain the breach immediately and minimize public disclosure, suggesting a desire to clean up the affected systems before involving external legal counsel or forensic experts. What is the most ethically and legally sound approach for the incident response team to take in this critical situation? Option A. Halt all containment activities, secure all relevant logs and system images for forensic preservation, and immediately engage internal legal counsel and external forensic specialists to guide the response. Option B. Immediately initiate system isolation and data deletion protocols to prevent further exfiltration, while simultaneously preparing a minimal public statement to address the immediate concerns. Option C. Inform the board of the legal and ethical risks associated with immediate data deletion and uncontrolled containment, advocating for a structured, evidence-preserving response guided by legal counsel. Option D. Proceed with containment and remediation efforts as per standard operating procedures, deferring formal legal and forensic engagement until after the immediate threat is neutralized. The correct answer is B. Immediately initiate system isolation and data deletion protocols to prevent further exfiltration, while simultaneously preparing a minimal public statement to address the immediate concerns. Explanation. This scenario presents a classic ethical dilemma in incident response, where the immediate pressure to contain a breach clashes with the legal and ethical obligations to report and preserve evidence. The challenge lies in balancing the organization's desire to minimize reputational damage and operational disruption with the imperative to comply with regulatory frameworks and uphold ethical standards. A hasty or incomplete response, driven by fear of consequences, can lead to more severe legal repercussions and a loss of trust. The correct approach involves a measured, evidence-preserving response that prioritizes legal and regulatory compliance. This means immediately engaging the appropriate legal counsel and forensic investigators to ensure that evidence is collected and handled in a manner that maintains its integrity and admissibility. This approach aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible data handling mandated by various regulations. Specifically, in the U.S. context, frameworks like NIST SB 800-61 Rev. 2 Computer Security Incident Handling Guide emphasize the importance of proper evidence handling and documentation. Furthermore, ethical considerations, such as transparency and accountability, dictate that stakeholders are informed appropriately and in a timely manner as guided by professional codes of conduct for incident responders. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate containment without proper evidence preservation would fail to meet legal and regulatory requirements. For instance, deleting or altering logs to clean up the system before proper forensic analysis could be construed as obstruction of justice or a violation of data breach notification laws, which often require the preservation of evidence for regulatory investigation. Another incorrect approach, such as withholding information from legal counsel or regulatory bodies, would violate the duty of candor and could lead to significant penalties for non-compliance with reporting obligations. This also undermines the principle of transparency, a cornerstone of ethical incident response. Professionals should approach such situations by first activating their organization's incident response plan, which should include clear protocols for legal and forensic engagement. A critical step is to involve legal counsel early to understand the specific reporting obligations and evidence preservation requirements under applicable laws, e.g., HIPAA for healthcare data, GDPR if applicable to EU citizens' data, or state-specific breach notification laws in the U.S. The decision-making process should be guided by a risk assessment that considers both the technical aspects of the incident and the potential legal and ethical ramifications. Prioritizing evidence integrity and regulatory compliance, even if it means a slightly longer containment period, is crucial for long-term organizational health and legal standing. Question 6. Quality control measures reveal that during a suspected insider threat incident involving unauthorized data exfiltration, the incident response team is considering different methods for analyzing network traffic to identify the source and scope of the exfiltration. Which approach best balances the need for incident investigation with regulatory compliance and data privacy principles? Option A. Immediately cease all network traffic analysis to avoid any potential privacy violations and rely solely on endpoint logs for investigation. Option B. Implement a targeted network traffic analysis focusing on protocols and data flows commonly associated with data exfiltration, e.g., FTP, HTTP uploads, cloud storage sync protocols, and analyze only the traffic exhibiting suspicious patterns or containing sensitive data indicators. Option C. Analyze only the metadata of network packets, such as source and destination IP addresses and timestamps, without examining packet payloads, to strictly adhere to privacy regulations. Option D. Capture and analyze all network traffic flowing through the affected network segments, regardless of protocol or content, to ensure no relevant data is missed. Correct answer is D. Capture and analyze all network traffic flowing through the affected network segments, regardless of protocol or content, to ensure no relevant data is missed. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an incident handler to balance the immediate need for network visibility during an incident with the long-term implications of data privacy and regulatory compliance. The incident handler must make a judgment call on the scope of network traffic analysis, considering what data is essential for incident containment and eradication versus what data could potentially violate privacy regulations or be considered excessive. Careful judgment is required to avoid overreach while ensuring sufficient information is gathered to effectively resolve the incident. The correct approach involves a targeted analysis of network traffic, focusing on protocols and data flows directly relevant to the suspected incident. This approach is best professional practice because it aligns with the principle of least privilege and data minimization, which are often implicitly or explicitly supported by regulatory frameworks governing data privacy and security. For example, in the U.S., regulations like HIPAA for health information and various state data breach notification laws emphasize the need to protect sensitive personal information. Analyzing only relevant traffic minimizes the risk of inadvertently exposing or mishandling protected data, thereby upholding ethical obligations and regulatory requirements. An incorrect approach that involves a broad, indiscriminate capture and analysis of all network traffic, regardless of relevance, poses significant regulatory and ethical failures. This indiscriminate capture could lead to the collection of personally identifiable information, PI, or other sensitive data that is not directly related to the incident. Such an action could violate privacy laws, such as the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, or GDPR if applicable, by exceeding the scope of legitimate data collection for incident response. Ethically, it represents an overreach into user privacy without sufficient justification. Another incorrect approach, which is to halt all network traffic analysis due to privacy concerns without a clear alternative plan, is also professionally unacceptable. This inaction can lead to an incomplete understanding of the incident, hindering effective containment and eradication. This failure to adequately respond to a security incident can have severe consequences, potentially leading to further data breaches or system compromise, which in itself can trigger regulatory notification requirements and penalties. The professional reasoning process should involve a risk-based assessment, identifying the critical data needed for incident resolution, understanding the potential privacy implications of collecting that data, and implementing technical and procedural controls to minimize those risks while still achieving the incident response objectives. This often involves consulting with legal counsel or privacy officers to ensure compliance. Question 7. The risk matrix shows a high likelihood of a man-in-the-middle (MID-M) attack targeting sensitive customer data transmitted across the internal network. As the certified incident handler, which of the following actions represents the most appropriate and compliant response to mitigate this immediate threat? Option A. Isolate the entire network segment where the sensitive data resides from the rest of the network until the threat is fully neutralized. Option B. Adjust firewall rules to block all inbound traffic from external IP addresses not explicitly whitelisted. Option C. Implement strong transport layer security, TLS, encryption for all data in transit, and initiate network traffic analysis to detect anomalous communication patterns. Option D. Immediately disable all non-essential network services and applications to reduce the potential attack surface. Correct answer is C. Implement strong transport layer security, TLS, encryption for all data in transit, and initiate network traffic analysis to detect anomalous communication patterns. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for incident handlers. balancing immediate operational needs with the imperative to adhere to regulatory frameworks. The risk matrix highlights a potential vulnerability to a man-in-the-middle (MIT-M) attack which, if exploited, could lead to data breaches and compromise sensitive information. The professional challenge lies in selecting the most effective and compliant response under pressure, ensuring that the chosen mitigation strategy not only addresses the technical threat, but also aligns with established cybersecurity best practices and relevant regulations. The urgency of a potential attack necessitates a swift decision, but haste without proper consideration of regulatory implications can lead to significant legal and financial repercussions. The correct approach involves implementing robust encryption protocols and conducting network traffic analysis. This strategy directly addresses the technical vector of a MIT-M attack by making intercepted data unreadable and by actively monitoring for suspicious traffic patterns indicative of such an attack. From a regulatory standpoint, this aligns with the principles of data protection and security mandated by frameworks such as the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, which is foundational for many U.S.-based incident response programs, and potentially specific industry regulations like HIPAA for healthcare data or PCI DSS for payment card information. These frameworks emphasize the need for confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data, all of which are threatened by MIT-M attacks. Implementing strong encryption and monitoring are proactive measures that demonstrate due diligence in protecting sensitive information, thereby fulfilling regulatory obligations to safeguard data. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on firewall rule adjustments without addressing the encryption of data in transit. While firewalls are crucial for network security, they primarily control access and traffic flow. They do not inherently protect data from being intercepted and read if it is transmitted unencrypted. This approach fails to meet the regulatory requirement of ensuring data confidentiality, as an attacker could still capture and decipher unencrypted sensitive information. Another incorrect approach would be to disable non-essential services to reduce the attack surface without a clear understanding of which services are truly non-essential and the potential impact on business operations. While reducing the attack surface is a valid security principle, a hasty or poorly executed implementation can disrupt critical business functions, potentially leading to non-compliance with service-level agreements or operational continuity requirements. Furthermore, this approach does not directly counter the MIT-M threat itself, but rather attempts to indirectly reduce opportunities, which is less effective than directly mitigating the attack vector. A third incorrect approach would be to immediately isolate the entire network segment without a thorough investigation. While isolation can prevent the spread of an attack, it is a drastic measure that can cause significant operational disruption and may not be necessary if the threat can be contained or mitigated through more targeted means. This approach, if not justified by a confirmed widespread compromise, could be seen as an overreaction and might violate operational continuity requirements or lead to unnecessary business downtime, which could have regulatory implications depending on the industry and data involved. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a rapid assessment of the threat, considering its potential impact and likelihood. This assessment should then be mapped against the organization's established incident response plan and relevant regulatory requirements. The chosen mitigation strategy should be the one that most effectively neutralizes the threat while minimizing operational disruption and ensuring compliance. This often involves a layered security approach, combining technical controls with vigilant monitoring and adherence to established protocols. Question 8. The risk matrix shows a high likelihood of a sophisticated malware attack targeting sensitive customer data, with a moderate impact on business operations. Considering the U.S. regulatory framework for incident handling and data protection, which of the following actions represents the most appropriate and compliant response regarding the host-based intrusion detection system, HIDS? Option A. Configure HIDS alerts to be sent to a general IT support email address for review by the first available technician. Option B. Rely solely on the HIDS passive logging capabilities to record system events, without enabling specific active threat detection rules. Option C. Temporarily disable the HIDS on systems identified as potential targets to minimize any potential performance impact during the period of heightened risk. Option D. Configure the HIDS to actively monitor for known malware signatures and behavioral anomalies indicative of data exfiltration, and ensure comprehensive, secure logging of all HIDS events. Correct answer is D. Configure the HIDS to actively monitor for known malware signatures and behavioral anomalies indicative of data exfiltration, and ensure comprehensive, secure logging of all HIDS events. Explanation: the risk matrix shows a high likelihood of a sophisticated malware attack targeting sensitive customer data, with a moderate impact on business operations. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a rapid, informed decision on how to best leverage existing security controls, specifically host-based intrusion detection systems, HIDS, to mitigate an imminent threat. The pressure to act quickly, coupled with the need to adhere to regulatory compliance and maintain data integrity, demands a nuanced understanding of HIDS capabilities and limitations within the specified regulatory framework. The correct approach involves configuring the HIDS to actively monitor for known malware signatures and behavioral anomalies indicative of data exfiltration, while simultaneously ensuring that the HIDS logs are being securely and comprehensively collected for forensic analysis. This aligns with the principles of proactive threat detection and robust incident response, mandated by regulations such as the U.S. Cybersecurity Enhancement Act of 2015 and NIST guidelines, which emphasize the importance of timely detection, containment, and evidence preservation. The active monitoring ensures immediate identification of the threat, and the secure logging provides the necessary audit trail for post-incident investigation and compliance reporting. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on passive HIDS logging without enabling active threat detection rules. This fails to meet the regulatory expectation of proactive defense and timely incident identification. While logging is crucial, passive monitoring alone would not alert responders to the ongoing attack, leading to a delayed response and potentially greater data compromise, violating the duty of care to protect customer data as outlined in regulations like the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, if applicable to the data type. Another incorrect approach would be to disable HIDS on systems identified as potential targets to reduce performance impact. This is a severe regulatory and ethical failure. Disabling security controls in the face of a known high-likelihood threat directly contravenes the principle of maintaining a secure environment and fulfilling due diligence obligations. It creates a blind spot, making it impossible to detect or respond to the attack, and would likely result in significant penalties under data breach notification laws and general cybersecurity standards. A further incorrect approach would be to configure HIDS alerts to be sent only to a general IT support queue without a dedicated incident response team. This creates an inefficient and potentially ineffective alert management process. While alerts are generated, the lack of a specialized team to triage and act upon them means the critical information might be overlooked or delayed, hindering the rapid response required by incident handling, best practices, and regulatory requirements for prompt notification and mitigation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a rapid assessment of the threat intelligence, a clear understanding of the organization's security architecture and the capabilities of its deployed tools like HIDS, and a thorough knowledge of applicable regulatory requirements. Prioritizing actions that offer the most effective combination of detection, prevention, and evidence preservation, while ensuring compliance, is paramount. This involves a risk-based approach where security controls are configured and utilized to address the most critical threats identified in the risk matrix. Question 9. Compliance review shows that the organization's incident response team exclusively utilizes a single, generic sandbox environment for all malware analysis, leading to significant delays in processing suspicious files and a growing backlog of potential threats. What is the most appropriate strategic adjustment to enhance the effectiveness of malware analysis and ensure regulatory adherence? Option A. Implement a diverse sandboxing strategy incorporating multiple, varied sandbox environments and integrate advanced behavioral analysis tools to detect evasive malware and understand its actions. Option B. Acquire additional instances of the same generic sandbox software to increase processing capacity and reduce the analysis backlog. Option C. Prioritize the development of custom signature-based detection rules for the existing sandbox to identify known threats more rapidly. Option D. Expand the existing single sandbox environment by increasing its allocated resources and storage. The correct answer is A. Implement a diverse sandboxing strategy incorporating multiple, varied sandbox environments and integrate advanced behavioral analysis tools to detect evasive malware and understand its actions. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response, balancing the need for thorough investigation with the imperative to minimize operational disruption and adhere to regulatory mandates. The organization's reliance on a single sandbox environment for all malware analysis creates a significant bottleneck and introduces risks. If the sandbox is compromised or becomes overloaded, it can hinder the timely analysis of critical threats, potentially leading to extended dwell times for attackers and increased damage. Furthermore, the lack of diverse sandboxing environments means that sophisticated malware designed to evade specific sandbox configurations might go undetected, posing a serious compliance risk. The pressure to quickly resolve incidents while maintaining robust security controls requires careful judgment and strategic resource allocation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves implementing a multi-layered sandboxing strategy that includes diverse environments and leverages behavioral analysis tools. This approach is justified by several regulatory and ethical considerations. For instance, under frameworks like the NIST Incident Response Guide, which informs many incident handler practices, organizations are expected to have robust capabilities for detecting, analyzing, and containing threats. Diverse sandboxing environments increase the likelihood of detecting evasive malware by presenting different execution contexts. Behavioral analysis, by focusing on the actions of the malware rather than just its signature, provides deeper insights into its true intent and potential impact, which is crucial for accurate risk assessment and effective remediation. This proactive and comprehensive approach aligns with the ethical duty of an incident handler to protect the organization's assets and data to the best of their ability, and it directly supports compliance with regulations that mandate effective incident response and threat detection. Incorrect approaches analysis. Continuing to rely solely on a single, generic sandbox environment is professionally unacceptable because it creates a single point of failure and limits the effectiveness of malware analysis. This approach fails to meet the implied standards of due diligence and reasonable care expected in incident handling, as it does not adequately address the evolving threat landscape and the sophistication of modern malware. It also increases the risk of noncompliance with regulations that require organizations to maintain effective security controls and respond to incidents in a timely and comprehensive manner. Expanding the single sandbox environment without diversifying its configurations or incorporating other analysis techniques is also problematic. While it might increase capacity, it does not address the fundamental limitation of a single analysis profile. Malware specifically designed to evade that particular sandbox configuration will likely still go undetected. This approach represents a superficial fix that does not enhance the depth or breadth of threat detection capabilities, leaving the organization vulnerable and potentially non-compliant. Focusing solely on signature-based detection within the sandbox, while a component of analysis, is insufficient on its own. Modern malware often employs polymorphic or metamorphic techniques, rendering signature-based detection unreliable. Over-reliance on this method neglects the critical need for behavioral analysis to understand the actual impact and propagation methods of unknown threats. This failure to adopt more advanced analysis techniques can lead to missed detections and prolonged incident resolution times, impacting regulatory compliance and organizational security. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing this situation should adopt a risk-based approach. First, assess the current limitations of the existing sandboxing infrastructure and the potential impact of these limitations on incident response effectiveness and regulatory compliance. Second, research and evaluate diverse sandboxing solutions and behavioral analysis tools that can complement the existing setup, considering factors like cost, integration complexity, and detection efficacy against known evasion techniques. Third, prioritize the implementation of solutions that offer the greatest improvement in threat detection and analysis capabilities, while remaining within budgetary and operational constraints. This decision-making process should involve collaboration with relevant stakeholders, including IT security, legal, and compliance teams, to ensure that the chosen strategy aligns with organizational objectives and regulatory requirements. Continuous monitoring and adaptation of the sandboxing and analysis strategy are essential to keep pace with evolving threats. Question 10. The risk matrix shows a critical vulnerability identified on a legacy system that, while not directly exposed to the internet, hosts sensitive customer data. The IT operations team has flagged that patching this system will require a significant downtime, potentially impacting customer service for several hours. The security team has also identified several medium-severity vulnerabilities on publicly accessible web servers that have readily available patches with minimal downtime. Given these competing priorities, which of the following represents the most professionally sound approach to incident handling? Option A. Prioritize patching the critical vulnerability on the legacy system, scheduling the downtime during a low-usage period, and communicating the planned outage to stakeholders in advance. Option B. Initiate a discussion with senior management to gauge their tolerance for risk before taking any action on either set of vulnerabilities. Option C. Immediately patch the medium-severity vulnerabilities on the publicly accessible web servers, as these are more exposed and therefore represent a more immediate threat. Option D. Defer patching the critical vulnerability on the legacy system until a less disruptive maintenance window can be identified, focusing instead on the publicly accessible web servers. Correct answer is A. Prioritize patching the critical vulnerability on the legacy system, scheduling the downtime during a low-usage period, and communicating the planned outage to stakeholders in advance. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident handling, balancing operational continuity with the imperative to address security vulnerabilities. Professional challenge lies in prioritizing remediation efforts when faced with limited resources and the potential for disruption. A rigorous, risk-based approach is essential, informed by regulatory requirements and ethical obligations to protect data and systems. The correct approach involves a systematic process of vulnerability scanning, risk assessment, and prioritized patching, directly aligning with the principles of due diligence expected of incident handlers. This methodology ensures that the most critical vulnerabilities, posing the greatest threat to the organization's assets and data, are addressed first. This aligns with the general principles of information security management and the implied duty of care under various regulatory frameworks that mandate reasonable security measures to prevent data breaches. While specific regulations are not provided for this exam, the underlying ethical and professional expectation is to act prudently and proactively to mitigate known risks. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on patching the most recently discovered vulnerabilities, regardless of their impact or exploitability, fails to adequately address the organization's risk posture. This can lead to wasted resources on low-priority issues, while critical vulnerabilities remain unaddressed, increasing the likelihood of a successful attack. This demonstrates a lack of professional judgment and potentially a failure to meet the standard of care expected in managing security risks. Another incorrect approach, which is to delay patching critical vulnerabilities due to potential operational disruption without a documented risk acceptance process, is professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a disregard for known security risks and an abdication of responsibility. Organizations have a duty to protect their systems and data, and simply ignoring or deferring critical patches without a formal, risk-informed decision is a significant ethical and potentially regulatory failing. Finally, an approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or the opinions of a few individuals rather than a structured vulnerability management program is also flawed. This lacks objectivity and can lead to misallocation of resources and an incomplete understanding of the threat landscape. Professional incident handling requires data-driven decision-making and adherence to established best practices and regulatory expectations for security management. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves 1. Understanding the organization's assets and data sensitivity. 2. Implementing a robust vulnerability scanning program to identify potential weaknesses. 3. Conducting a thorough risk assessment for each identified vulnerability, considering its severity, exploitability, and potential impact. 4. Prioritizing remediation based on this risk assessment. 5. Developing and executing a patch management plan that balances security needs with operational requirements, including a formal process for accepting residual risk when immediate patching is not feasible. 6. Documenting all decisions and actions taken. Question 11. Upon reviewing network logs, an incident handler discovers evidence of unauthorized access to the organization's wireless network, potentially exposing sensitive customer data. The handler needs to respond effectively and compliantly with U.S. regulations. Which of the following approaches best aligns with professional incident handling best practices and regulatory expectations in the United States? Option A. Immediately isolate the affected wireless access points, preserve all relevant logs and network traffic data for forensic analysis, and then proceed with a systematic investigation to determine the scope and impact of the breach before implementing containment and eradication measures. Option B. Change all wireless network passwords to a new, complex passphrase without analyzing the logs or identifying the specific access points that were compromised. Option C. Immediately issue a company-wide alert to all employees and customers about a potential data breach, and then begin a superficial review of network activity. Option D. Promptly disable all wireless network access for all users to prevent further unauthorized access, and then begin investigating the cause of the intrusion. The correct answer is A. Immediately isolate the affected wireless access points, preserve all relevant logs and network traffic data for forensic analysis, and then proceed with a systematic investigation to determine the scope and impact of the breach before implementing containment and eradication measures. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an incident handler to balance immediate threat mitigation with long-term compliance and data integrity, all within the specific regulatory landscape of the United States. The incident involves a potential breach of sensitive wireless network data, necessitating a swift and effective response that adheres to established legal and ethical standards. The incident handler must not only contain the immediate threat, but also ensure that the response actions do not inadvertently compromise evidence or violate privacy regulations. The correct approach involves a methodical and documented process of identifying the scope of the wireless intrusion, isolating affected access points, and preserving any digital evidence related to the compromise. This aligns with best practices for incident response, such as those outlined by NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, special publications, which are foundational for U.S. federal agencies and widely adopted by private sector organizations. Specifically, NIST SB 800-61 Rev. 2, Computer Security Incident Handling Guide, emphasizes the importance of preparation, detection and analysis, containment, eradication, and recovery. The correct approach prioritizes these phases, ensuring that the response is thorough, legally defensible, and minimizes further damage. Regulatory frameworks like HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, for healthcare data, or PCI DSS, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, for financial data, if applicable to the organization, would also mandate such a structured and evidence-preserving approach to security incidents. An incorrect approach that involves immediately disabling all wireless access points without proper analysis and documentation is professionally unacceptable. This action, while seemingly decisive, could lead to the loss of critical forensic evidence needed to understand the attack vector, the extent of the breach, and to identify the perpetrators. It also fails to consider the operational impact on the organization, and may violate data preservation requirements under various U.S. laws if sensitive data was accessed or exfiltrated. Another incorrect approach, such as attempting to remediate the wireless network by simply changing default passwords without investigating the root cause, is also flawed. This superficial fix does not address the underlying vulnerability that allowed the intrusion and leaves the network susceptible to future attacks. It neglects the analytical phase of incident response, which is crucial for understanding and preventing recurrence. Furthermore, it may not satisfy regulatory requirements for a comprehensive incident response and remediation plan. A third incorrect approach, which involves immediately notifying all employees and external stakeholders about potential wireless compromise without a clear understanding of the scope and impact, is premature and can cause undue panic. While transparency is important, it must be balanced with accuracy and a clear communication strategy developed during the incident response process. Premature notification without confirmed data can lead to misinformation and reputational damage, and may not align with specific breach notification requirements under laws like the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, or state-specific breach notification laws, which often specify when and how notification must occur based on confirmed data compromise. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured incident response plan that guides actions through distinct phases: preparation, detection and analysis, containment, eradication, and recovery. This plan should be regularly reviewed and updated. When an incident occurs, the handler should first focus on accurate detection and analysis to understand the nature and scope of the threat. Containment strategies should be implemented to limit further damage, with a strong emphasis on preserving evidence. Remediation should be thorough and address the root cause. Communication should be strategic and timely, adhering to legal and regulatory notification requirements. Documentation is paramount throughout the entire process to ensure accountability, facilitate post-incident review, and support legal or regulatory inquiries. Question 12. System analysis indicates a potential data exfiltration event involving customer payment card information. The incident response team has identified the affected systems and the approximate volume of data potentially compromised. What is the most appropriate approach for classifying this incident to ensure compliance with U.S. legal and regulatory requirements? Option A. Classify the incident by prioritizing the technical sophistication of the exfiltration method, as this dictates the necessary remediation efforts. Option B. Defer the formal classification of the incident until the full scope of data exfiltration and recovery efforts are completed. Option C. Classify the incident based on a comprehensive risk assessment that considers the sensitivity of payment card data, potential financial impact on customers and the organization, and relevant U.S. data breach notification laws. Option D. Classify the incident solely based on the number of payment card records potentially exfiltrated, as this is the primary metric for determining the scale of the breach. Correct answer is C. Classify the incident based on a comprehensive risk assessment that considers the sensitivity of payment card data, potential financial impact on customers and the organization, and relevant U.S. data breach notification laws. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because accurately classifying an incident is the foundational step for determining the appropriate response, resource allocation, and legal/regulatory obligations. Failure to correctly classify can lead to underreporting, inadequate remediation, and significant legal penalties. The challenge lies in balancing the urgency of the incident with the need for thorough analysis to ensure compliance with the specified regulatory framework. The correct approach involves a systematic risk assessment that considers the potential impact of the incident on data confidentiality, integrity, and availability, as well as the potential for financial loss, reputational damage, and legal/regulatory noncompliance. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and proactive risk management mandated by regulatory bodies. Specifically, for a certified incident handler, operating under U.S. regulations, this would involve referencing frameworks like NIST SB 800-61 Revision 2, which emphasizes understanding the scope and impact of an incident to determine its severity and the necessary response actions, including notification requirements under laws like HIPAA or GDPR, if applicable to the data involved, though the prompt specifies U.S. regulations. So focus on U.S. federal and state laws. An incorrect approach that prioritizes immediate containment without a proper classification risks overlooking critical legal or regulatory triggers. For instance, classifying an incident solely based on the number of affected records without considering the sensitivity of the data, e.g., personally identifiable information, protected health information, would be a regulatory failure. This could lead to noncompliance with data breach notification laws that are triggered by the type of data compromised, not just the volume. Another incorrect approach is to classify an incident based on the perceived technical complexity of the attack vector. While technical understanding is important, the legal and regulatory classification hinges on the impact and the data involved. Focusing solely on the technical aspect without considering the business and legal implications would be a significant ethical and regulatory oversight, potentially leading to missed reporting deadlines or incorrect reporting to authorities. A third incorrect approach is to defer classification to a later stage, assuming it can be resolved during the eradication or recovery phases. This is a critical failure because classification dictates the entire incident response process, including legal counsel engagement, regulatory body notifications, and public relations strategy. Delaying classification means delaying these crucial steps, increasing the risk of noncompliance and exacerbating the damage. The professional decision-making process should involve a clear, documented methodology for incident classification. This methodology should be predefined and aligned with relevant U.S. federal and state laws and industry best practices. When an incident occurs, the incident handler should follow this methodology, gathering information about the affected systems, data types, potential impact, and any specific regulatory triggers. This systematic approach ensures that classification is objective, defensible, and compliant. Question 13. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a healthcare organization's electronic health record (EHR) system has been accessed without authorization, and evidence suggests that patient names, social security numbers, and medical record numbers have been exfiltrated. Which of the following incident response approaches best aligns with U.S. federal regulatory requirements for handling such a security incident? Option A. Delay external notification to affected individuals and regulatory bodies until the full scope and impact of the exfiltration are definitively determined, which may take several weeks. Option B. Immediately initiate the incident response plan, focusing on containment and eradication of the unauthorized access, and begin the process for notifying affected individuals and the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, as mandated by HIPAA breach notification rule. Option C. Classify the incident solely as a malware infection and focus exclusively on technical remediation of the EHR system to prevent further unauthorized access. Option D. Prioritize notifying only the internal IT department and executive leadership about the unauthorized access and data exfiltration. The correct answer is B. Immediately initiate the incident response plan, focusing on containment and eradication of the unauthorized access, and begin the process for notifying affected individuals and the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, as mandated by HIPAA breach notification rule. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires the certified incident handler, CIH, to not only identify the type of security incident, but also to prioritize response actions based on potential impact and regulatory obligations, all within the context of U.S. federal regulations. The CIH must demonstrate a nuanced understanding of how different incident types trigger specific reporting and mitigation requirements under frameworks like HIPAA, GDPR, if applicable to U.S. entities handling EU citizen data, and state-specific data breach notification laws. The pressure to act swiftly while ensuring compliance adds to the complexity. The correct approach involves accurately categorizing the incident as a data breach involving protected health information, (PHI), and immediately initiating the incident response plan, which includes notification protocols mandated by HIPAA and relevant state laws. This is the best professional practice because it directly addresses the regulatory requirements for breaches of sensitive data. HIPAA, specifically the breach notification rule, mandates timely notification to affected individuals, the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, and in some cases, the media, depending on the scale of the breach. Failure to comply can result in significant penalties. An incorrect approach would be to classify the incident solely as a malware infection and focus only on technical remediation without considering the exfiltration of sensitive data. This fails to acknowledge the regulatory implications of a data breach, particularly under HIPAA, which has stringent notification requirements for PHI. Ethical failure lies in potentially withholding critical information from affected individuals and regulatory bodies, thereby undermining trust and patient privacy. Another incorrect approach would be to delay notification to affected individuals and regulatory bodies while attempting to fully ascertain the scope of the breach, even after initial indicators point to a data exfiltration. While thorough investigation is important, regulatory frameworks often set strict timeframes for notification that begin upon discovery of a breach, not upon its complete resolution. This delay could lead to non-compliance with HIPAA breach notification rule and state breach notification laws, resulting in legal and reputational damage. A further incorrect approach would be to only focus on notifying the IT department and internal stakeholders, without initiating external notification procedures, as required by law. This overlooks the legal and ethical obligations to inform affected individuals and relevant authorities when sensitive data is compromised. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a rapid initial assessment to determine the incident type and potential impact, followed by the immediate activation of the incident response plan. This plan should clearly outline steps for containment, eradication, recovery, and crucially, regulatory notification based on the nature of the compromised data and applicable laws. Professionals must prioritize actions that ensure both technical resolution and legal/ethical compliance. Question 14. Examination of the data shows a significant data breach impacting a U.S.-based financial institution involving the exfiltration of customer personally identifiable information, PI, and sensitive financial records. The incident response team has contained the immediate threat and is working to assess the full extent of the compromise. Given the nature of the compromised data and the industry, what is the most appropriate next step regarding coordination with external bodies? Option A. Continue internal investigation and remediation efforts, and only consider notifying external bodies if the internal investigation reveals evidence of criminal activity or if specifically requested by a regulatory body. Option B. Focus solely on technical containment and recovery, assuming that the institution's existing cyber insurance policy will handle any necessary external notifications. Option C. Immediately notify the relevant U.S. federal law enforcement agencies, e.g., FBI, and the appropriate U.S. financial regulatory bodies, e.g., OC, FDIC, depending on charter of the breach, providing initial details as per established reporting guidelines. Option D. Inform the institution's legal counsel and await their explicit instruction on whether and to whom to report the incident, without initiating any proactive external communication. The correct answer is C. Immediately notify the relevant U.S. federal law enforcement agencies, e.g., FBI, and the appropriate U.S. financial regulatory bodies, e.g., OC, FDIC, depending on charter of the breach, providing initial details as per established reporting guidelines. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for incident handlers, balancing the need for rapid containment and eradication of a security incident with the legal and regulatory obligations to report and cooperate with external authorities. The professional challenge lies in navigating the complex interplay between technical response, legal requirements, and organizational policy, all while under time pressure. A critical aspect is understanding the specific reporting thresholds and timelines mandated by relevant U.S. federal regulations, such as those pertaining to data breaches involving personally identifiable information, PI, or critical infrastructure. The correct approach involves a structured and compliant engagement with law enforcement and regulatory bodies. This means identifying the specific agencies with jurisdiction based on the nature of the incident and the data compromised, and then initiating communication within the legally prescribed timeframes. This proactive and transparent engagement is crucial for fulfilling reporting obligations, facilitating a coordinated response, and potentially mitigating legal repercussions. It demonstrates adherence to the principle of accountability and supports the broader goals of national cybersecurity. An incorrect approach would be to delay or omit reporting to relevant authorities. This failure to comply with statutory reporting requirements can lead to significant penalties, including fines and legal action, and can hinder the effectiveness of broader law enforcement efforts to combat cybercrime. Another incorrect approach is to unilaterally decide not to involve law enforcement or regulatory bodies without a thorough assessment of legal obligations. This can stem from a misunderstanding of reporting triggers or a misguided attempt to contain the incident solely internally, which may be insufficient or even illegal depending on the circumstances and the type of data involved. Finally, providing incomplete or misleading information to authorities, even if unintentional, can also constitute a regulatory failure and damage trust, potentially leading to more severe consequences. The professional decision-making process should involve an immediate assessment of the incident's scope and impact, particularly concerning sensitive data. This assessment should trigger a review of internal incident response plans and relevant legal and regulatory frameworks. If reporting obligations are identified, the incident handler must prioritize timely and accurate communication with the appropriate law enforcement and regulatory agencies, documenting all interactions. This process emphasizes a risk-based, legally informed, and transparent approach to incident management. Question 15. Assessment of a ransomware incident response scenario where an organization's IT security team has successfully contained the spread of the ransomware and is beginning the process of system restoration. The Standard Operating Procedures, SOP, for ransomware incidents clearly outline a multi-step process that includes, after initial containment, an immediate assessment of data exfiltration, and the initiation of the regulatory notification process, even if full system restoration is not yet complete. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory compliance and professional incident handling best practices in the United States? Option A. Attempt to manually remediate the ransomware without consulting the SOPs, and then decide on notification based on the perceived severity of the incident. Option B. Focus solely on technical eradication and system restoration, deferring any notification steps until the incident is completely resolved and all evidence is preserved. Option C. Immediately proceed with full system restoration and notify regulatory bodies only after all systems are confirmed to be clean and operational. Option D. Initiate the data exfiltration assessment and begin the regulatory notification process as stipulated in the SOPs, even while system restoration is ongoing. The correct answer is C. Immediately proceed with full system restoration and notify regulatory bodies only after all systems are confirmed to be clean and operational. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an incident handler to balance the immediate need for containment and eradication with the legal and regulatory obligations of data breach notification. The pressure to act quickly to minimize damage can sometimes lead to overlooking critical procedural steps that have significant legal ramifications. The specific jurisdiction's data protection laws, e.g., U.S. federal and state laws, mandate specific timelines and content for notifications, and failure to comply can result in severe penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves adhering to the established standard operating procedures, SOP, for a ransomware incident, which explicitly includes the steps for assessing the scope of the breach, identifying affected data, and initiating the regulatory notification process within the mandated timeframe. This approach is right because it prioritizes both technical incident response and legal compliance. The SOPs are designed to ensure that all necessary actions are taken in a structured and timely manner, aligning with the requirements of relevant U.S. data protection laws. These laws often require notification to affected individuals and regulatory bodies within a specific period after discovery of a breach, and the SOPs ensure this critical step is not missed. Correct approach is analysis. An approach that focuses solely on technical eradication without immediately initiating the notification process, even if the SOPs are clear on this, fails to meet regulatory obligations. This could lead to exceeding the legally defined notification periods, resulting in fines and legal action. Another incorrect approach would be to bypass the SOPs entirely and attempt to contain the incident through methods not outlined, potentially leading to incomplete eradication or further data compromise. More importantly, this bypass would likely omit the crucial step of legal counsel review and the formal notification process, again risking regulatory noncompliance. A third incorrect approach might be to delay notification until the incident is fully resolved and all systems are restored, without considering the discovery date as the trigger for notification timelines. This misunderstands the legal requirement, which is typically triggered by the discovery of the breach, not its resolution. Such a delay would almost certainly violate notification deadlines. Professional reasoning. Professionals should always refer to and follow their organization's documented SOPs for incident response. These SOPs are developed to ensure compliance with legal and regulatory frameworks. In any incident, the first step after initial assessment should be to consult the relevant SOP. If the SOP clearly outlines a notification process, that process must be initiated promptly, often in parallel with technical containment efforts. Collaboration with legal counsel is paramount to ensure all notification requirements are met accurately and within the legally mandated timeframes. Decision-making should be guided by the principle of compliance by design with an incident response, ensuring that legal and regulatory considerations are integrated into every stage of the response. Question 16. Which approach would be most effective in managing a significant data breach incident, balancing the need for rapid response with thorough investigation and regulatory compliance under U.S. frameworks? Option A. Engage external cybersecurity consultants to take complete control of the incident response process without internal team involvement. Option B. Conduct an exhaustive forensic investigation to fully understand the incident's origin and impact before taking any containment or eradication actions. Option C. Implement immediate containment and eradication measures while concurrently initiating forensic data collection and analysis to understand the scope and root cause. Option D. Focus solely on restoring affected systems to operational status as quickly as possible, deferring detailed investigation until after normal business operations have resumed. The correct answer is C. Implement immediate containment and eradication measures while concurrently initiating forensic data collection and analysis to understand the scope and root cause. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because incident response requires a delicate balance between rapid containment and thorough investigation, all while adhering to strict regulatory obligations. The pressure to restore services quickly can conflict with the need to preserve evidence and understand the root cause, which is critical for compliance and future prevention. Careful judgment is required to navigate these competing demands effectively and ethically. The correct approach involves a structured incident response lifecycle that prioritizes containment and eradication while simultaneously initiating forensic data collection and analysis. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and the need to demonstrate a proactive and responsible approach to security incidents, as often mandated by regulatory frameworks like the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, Special Publication 800-61, Revision 2, Computer Security Incident Handling Guide. This guide emphasizes a phased approach: preparation, detection and analysis, containment, eradication and recovery, and post-incident activity. By focusing on these phases, an organization can ensure that immediate threats are addressed, evidence is preserved for potential legal or regulatory action, and lessons learned are incorporated to improve future security posture. This methodical process is ethically sound, as it protects the organization's assets and data, and legally defensible, as it demonstrates compliance with incident reporting and data breach notification requirements. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate system restoration without adequate evidence preservation would be professionally unacceptable. This failure to collect and analyze forensic data could lead to an incomplete understanding of the incident's scope and origin, hindering the ability to identify vulnerabilities and prevent recurrence. Ethically, this could be seen as neglecting the duty to protect stakeholder data and systems. From a regulatory standpoint, this approach might violate requirements for breach notification and reporting, as the organization may not be able to accurately determine the extent of data compromised or the nature of the attack, leading to potential fines and legal repercussions under regulations like the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, or the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes extensive, prolonged investigation before any containment actions would also be professionally unsound. While thoroughness is important, delaying containment can allow an incident to spread, causing greater damage, data loss, and potential regulatory noncompliance. This could result in significant financial losses and reputational damage, failing the ethical obligation to act in the best interest of the organization and its customers. Such a delay could also be interpreted as a failure to exercise reasonable care in protecting sensitive information, potentially violating data protection laws. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a predefined incident response plan that clearly outlines the steps for each phase of the incident lifecycle. This plan should be regularly tested and updated. During an incident, the incident response team should assess the severity and impact, prioritize actions based on risk, and ensure that all actions are documented. Communication with relevant stakeholders, including legal counsel and regulatory bodies, should be initiated early and maintained throughout the process. The team must be empowered to make timely decisions while adhering to established protocols and legal requirements. Question 17. Implementation of a communication strategy during a significant data breach requires careful consideration of stakeholder needs and regulatory obligations. A certified incident handler, CIH, is tasked with developing this strategy, Which of the following approaches best aligns with U.S. regulatory frameworks and best practices for incident response? Option A. Immediately issue a public statement to all affected individuals and media outlets detailing the full technical scope of the breach to ensure maximum transparency. Option B. Prioritize internal notification to key response teams and executive leadership, followed by a phased, fact-based external communication plan to affected individuals and regulatory bodies, adhering to all mandated reporting timelines. Option C. Focus exclusively on technical containment and remediation efforts, deferring all communication, both internal and external, until the incident response is concluded. Option D. Delay all external communications until the incident is completely resolved and all affected systems are fully restored to prevent premature disclosure of sensitive information. The correct answer is B. Prioritize internal notification to key response teams and executive leadership, followed by a phased, fact-based external communication plan to affected individuals and regulatory bodies, adhering to all mandated reporting timelines. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in incident response, balancing the need for rapid, transparent communication with the potential for misinformation, panic, and regulatory scrutiny. The professional challenge lies in tailoring communication strategies to diverse stakeholders, each with distinct information needs and expectations, while adhering to strict regulatory frameworks. The urgency of an incident often conflicts with the time required for thorough verification and approval of communications, demanding a nuanced and strategic approach. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a tiered communication strategy that prioritizes internal stakeholders with critical information first, followed by a carefully managed external communication plan. Internally, this means informing relevant teams e.g., legal, IT security, executive leadership, promptly with actionable intelligence, enabling them to prepare and respond effectively. Externally, this approach emphasizes clear, concise, and factual updates to affected parties and regulatory bodies, adhering to mandated reporting timelines and content requirements. This strategy ensures that internal teams are equipped to manage the incident and that external communications are accurate, timely, and compliant with regulations, thereby mitigating reputational damage and legal repercussions. For a certified incident handler C. In the U.S., this aligns with frameworks like NIST SB 800-61, which stresses timely and accurate reporting to relevant authorities and stakeholders. Incorrect approaches analysis. Communicating broadly and immediately to all external parties without internal alignment or verification is a failure. This can lead to widespread panic, speculation, and the dissemination of unconfirmed or inaccurate information, potentially violating data breach notification laws, e.g., state-specific breach laws in the U.S. that require specific content and timelines for notification. It also bypasses essential internal coordination, hindering effective incident containment and remediation. Focusing solely on internal communication and delaying external notifications until the incident is fully resolved is also problematic. Many regulations, e.g., HIPAA for healthcare, GLBA for financial institutions, mandate specific timeframes for notifying affected individuals and regulatory bodies, regardless of the incident's resolution status. Such delays can result in significant fines and loss of trust. Disclosing detailed technical information about the incident externally before it is fully understood or contained can inadvertently provide attackers with valuable intelligence, potentially exacerbating the breach or enabling further attacks. It also risks revealing vulnerabilities that could be exploited by others, creating broader systemic risks. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a phased communication plan. First, activate the incident response team and internal stakeholders, providing them with an initial assessment and their roles. Second, develop a communication matrix outlining who needs to be informed when and with what level of detail, considering regulatory requirements. Third, draft and approve external communications, ensuring factual accuracy and compliance with all applicable laws and regulations. Finally, execute the communication plan, maintaining a log of all communications and updating stakeholders as the incident evolves. This structured approach ensures that all necessary parties are informed appropriately and that regulatory obligations are met, while also protecting the organization's reputation and operational integrity. Question 18. The assessment process reveals that a sophisticated network-based malware has infiltrated the organization's network, actively exfiltrating sensitive customer data and encrypting critical server files. As a certified incident handler, C, operating under U.S. federal regulations, which of the following approaches best aligns with the immediate priorities of incident response? Option A. Prioritize isolating the infected network segments and disabling compromised user accounts to prevent further spread and data exfiltration, followed by eradication. Option B. Immediately initiate a full system backup of all affected servers to preserve data for forensic analysis before any other action. Option C. Commence a comprehensive forensic imaging of all potentially affected systems to gather evidence before taking any containment actions. Option D. Notify all customers and regulatory bodies immediately about the data breach and encryption, regardless of the current understanding of the incident's scope. The correct answer is B. Immediately initiate a full system backup of all affected servers to preserve data for forensic analysis before any other action. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a critical incident involving network-based malware, presenting a significant challenge for a certified incident handler C. The primary professional challenge lies in the immediate need to contain the threat while adhering strictly to the U.S. regulatory framework, specifically the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, Special Publication 800-61 Revision 2, Computer Security Incident Handling Guide. This guide mandates a structured approach to incident response, emphasizing timely and effective containment, eradication, and recovery, all while ensuring proper documentation and communication. The complexity arises from balancing the urgency of the situation with the need for methodical execution to avoid further damage or regulatory noncompliance. The correct approach involves prioritizing containment actions that minimize the spread of the malware and its impact on critical systems, aligning with NIST SB 800-61R2's guidance on containment strategies. This includes isolating affected systems, blocking malicious network traffic, and disabling compromised accounts. This approach is professionally sound because it directly addresses the immediate threat as outlined in the NIST framework, aiming to limit the scope of the incident and protect sensitive data. Adherence to these steps ensures that the incident response is both effective in mitigating damage and compliant with established best practices for federal information systems. An incorrect approach that involves immediately attempting to eradicate the malware without proper containment would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from bypassing a crucial step in the incident response lifecycle, as defined by NIST SB 800-61R2. Eradication without containment can lead to the malware spreading to other systems during the removal process, exacerbating the incident and potentially causing more widespread damage. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the incident response process and a failure to prioritize actions that minimize immediate risk. Another incorrect approach, such as solely focusing on forensic analysis before any containment or eradication measures, would also be professionally unsound. While forensic analysis is vital for understanding the incident, delaying containment in favor of immediate deep analysis, as per NIST SB 800-61R2, can allow the malware to propagate further, increasing the potential for data breaches and system disruption. This approach neglects the urgency required in the early stages of an incident to prevent escalating damage. Finally, an approach that involves immediately notifying all stakeholders, including external parties, without a clear understanding of the incident's scope and impact, will be premature and potentially damaging. NIST SB 800-61R2 emphasizes that communication should be timely and appropriate, but also strategic. Premature or excessive notification without confirmed details can lead to misinformation, panic, and unnecessary reputational damage, while also potentially alerting adversaries. The professional decision-making process for such situations should follow a structured incident response plan, guided by frameworks like NIST SB 800-61R2. This involves 1. Preparation, having a plan and tools ready. 2. Detection and analysis, identifying the incident and understanding its nature. 3. Containment, eradication, and recovery, taking immediate steps to stop the spread, remove the threat, and restore systems. 4. Post-incident activity, learning from the incident and improving defenses. In this scenario, the focus must be on the critical steps of containment and eradication, executed in a manner that is both swift and compliant with regulatory guidelines. Question 19. During the evaluation of a significant data breach impacting customer personal information, what is the most effective public relations and crisis communication approach to optimize the incident response process, adhering strictly to U.S. regulatory frameworks such as the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, and the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA? Option A. Delay public communication until the full scope of the breach and its impact are definitively determined, focusing initially on internal containment and forensic analysis to avoid premature or inaccurate statements. Option B. Issue a brief, generic statement confirming an ongoing security incident, without disclosing specific details about the data involved or the number of individuals affected, to prevent public panic and further exploitation. Option C. Prioritize internal communication to employees and stakeholders first, then release a statement to the public only after all internal investigations are complete and a long-term remediation plan is fully developed. Option D. Immediately issue a public statement acknowledging the breach, detailing the types of data compromised, the estimated number of affected individuals, and outlining the immediate steps being taken to secure systems and notify regulatory bodies and affected individuals, while also providing resources for support. The correct answer is D. Immediately issue a public statement acknowledging the breach, detailing the types of data compromised, the estimated number of affected individuals, and outlining the immediate steps being taken to secure systems and notify regulatory bodies and affected individuals, while also providing resources for support. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because a data breach incident requires immediate and transparent communication to affected parties and regulatory bodies, while simultaneously managing reputational damage. The Certified Incident Handler CIH must balance the legal obligations for disclosure with the strategic need to maintain public trust. Careful judgment is required to ensure that communication is accurate, timely, and compliant with relevant regulations, without causing undue panic or providing information that could be exploited by malicious actors. The correct approach involves a proactive and transparent communication strategy that prioritizes informing affected individuals and relevant authorities promptly, while also outlining the steps being taken to mitigate the breach and prevent future occurrences. This aligns with the principles of data protection regulations, which often mandate timely notification of breaches to individuals and supervisory authorities. Ethical considerations also demand honesty and accountability in such situations. An approach that delays notification to assess the full impact before communicating fails to meet regulatory timelines and erodes trust. This can lead to significant penalties and legal repercussions for the organization. An approach that focuses solely on internal damage control and avoids external communication, even when legally required, is a direct violation of transparency principles and regulatory mandates. This can result in severe legal consequences and irreparable reputational harm. An approach that disseminates incomplete or speculative information to the public before verification is irresponsible and can lead to misinformation, panic, and further damage to the organization's credibility. It also risks violating privacy laws by prematurely disclosing sensitive details. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the specific regulatory requirements for breach notification in their jurisdiction. This involves identifying the types of data compromised, the number of individuals affected, and the timelines for reporting. Simultaneously, they should activate their incident response plan, which includes a predefined crisis communication strategy. This strategy should outline roles, responsibilities, communication channels, and key messaging. The communication should be factual, empathetic, and actionable, providing clear guidance to affected individuals. Regular updates should be provided as the situation evolves, maintaining transparency throughout the incident. Question 20. The control framework reveals a suspected network intrusion. During the initial investigation, the incident handler identifies that the suspected malicious activity may involve the exfiltration of sensitive customer data. To effectively analyze the nature and extent of the intrusion, the handler needs to capture network traffic, considering the potential presence of sensitive data and the need for thorough analysis. Which of the following approaches best aligns with professional incident handling practices and regulatory expectations for data protection? Option A. Rely solely on existing high-level network logs and firewall alerts, as packet capture might be too intrusive and legally problematic. Option B. Implement a targeted packet capture strategy focusing on the network segments and protocols most likely involved in the suspected exfiltration, while adhering to data minimization principles. Option C. Capture all network traffic across the entire organization for an extended period to ensure no relevant data is missed, regardless of its sensitivity. Option D. Immediately cease all network monitoring and packet capture to avoid any potential violation of data privacy regulations. Correct answer is B. Implement a targeted packet capture strategy focusing on the network segments and protocols most likely involved in the suspected exfiltration, while adhering to data minimization principles. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for network visibility during an incident with the legal and ethical obligations surrounding data privacy and the scope of authorized monitoring. A certified incident handler, CIH, must operate within a defined legal and regulatory framework, ensuring that their actions are both effective for incident response and compliant with applicable laws. The challenge lies in identifying malicious activity without inadvertently collecting or retaining sensitive personal information beyond what is necessary and legally permissible. Correct approach involves a targeted packet capture strategy that focuses on specific network segments and protocols identified as high risk or directly involved in the suspected incident. This method prioritizes the collection of relevant data for analysis while minimizing the capture of extraneous information. This aligns with the principle of data minimization, a common tenet in privacy regulations, which dictates that only data necessary for a specific, legitimate purpose should be collected and retained. Furthermore, it respects the scope of authority granted for network monitoring, ensuring that the incident handler is not overstepping boundaries and engaging in unauthorized surveillance. This approach is ethically sound as it demonstrates a commitment to privacy by design and by default. An incorrect approach that involves capturing all network traffic indiscriminately for an extended period would be professionally unacceptable. This indiscriminate capture violates the principle of data minimization and could lead to the collection of vast amounts of sensitive personal data without a clear justification. Such an action could expose the organization to significant legal liabilities under data protection laws, potentially resulting in fines and reputational damage. It also represents an overreach of authority, as it goes beyond the scope of what is typically authorized for incident response. Another incorrect approach, which is to rely solely on high-level network logs without packet capture, might be insufficient for deep analysis. While logs provide valuable metadata, they often lack the granular detail necessary to definitively identify the nature of an attack, the specific malware used, or the exfiltration of data. This could lead to an incomplete understanding of the incident, hindering effective remediation, and potentially allowing the threat to persist or re-emerge. Ethically, failing to gather sufficient evidence to fully address a security incident could be seen as a dereliction of duty. A third incorrect approach, which is to immediately cease all network monitoring upon suspecting personal data might be involved, is also professionally flawed. While caution is warranted, a complete halt to monitoring can leave the incident handler blind to ongoing malicious activity, allowing an attacker to continue their actions unimpeded. This could result in greater damage and a more severe breach. A professional decision-making process should involve a risk-based assessment, where the potential harm from continued monitoring is weighed against the potential harm from a lack of visibility, always guided by legal and ethical boundaries. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the incident's scope and potential impact. This is followed by identifying the specific data required for effective analysis and remediation. Crucially, this must be cross-referenced with the organization's incident response plan, legal counsel's guidance, and applicable regulatory requirements regarding data privacy and monitoring. The framework emphasizes a targeted, proportionate, and legally compliant approach to data collection and analysis, ensuring that the incident handler acts with both efficacy and integrity.